Hi, I'm David Brown. I'm the village engineer and director of public works for Vernon Hills. We wanted to provide you with an update on the status of the Route 45 Phase 1 study. We have been working with IDOT to move forward with the process. We wanted to apprise everyone of how things are going. Some of you might have attended the open house that occurred previously, and we wanted to tell you that the project is still moving forward. They anticipate approximately 3 months from now they will complete the Phase 1 portion of the study. Please understand that this is just the initial phase. There are 3 phases. The first phase is just the preliminary process, looking at environmental issues, looking at the geometry and traffic counts for the route, and what to do at each intersection and along the roadway. So please understand that there still will be a second phase, which is the plan preparation and bidding documents, and then there's the ultimate phase, which is phase 3, which is a construction of the project itself. The second phase takes 18 to 24 months after phase 1 is completed, and again, we anticipate that's probably about 3 months down the road. So please understand the project will not start tomorrow. You will not see construction vehicles out here and equipment. There still is not funding for the actual construction itself. So the construction itself is not included on the IDOT's 5-way highway program. So there is still some additional steps to move forward. Should you have any additional questions, please refer to our website at the address below, and we'll provide you with additional information. And for your viewing, we will show you a previous village board meeting, June 16th, 2009, that IDOT attended our village board meeting to help answer questions that were raised by the general public and our village board.
Okay, next item is Route 45 informational presentation.
Should we just, Mayor, intro? You want me to just mention?
Yeah.
Before we're doing, start?
Yeah.
Okay, but before you is information. Last week I sent you a number of emails and some letters, and then before you is items that came in late Friday or today. So there's a few items. Plus on the top is basically a summary of what we think are all the discrete issues that various residents and the staff and everybody else has brought up. So it's kind of a very, very brief summary. Just the intro for anybody who doesn't know, David Brown, our village engineer, and over on my other side there, John Bachek from the Illinois Department of Transportation. And John and Dave's going to do some intro, talk a little bit about the history of the project from our the village's perspective, and then John's here to answer questions. And hopefully during our discussion we'll be reviewing some of the most often asked questions and answer those. And then the last part of it is talking to the board about what your direction might be to draft a letter to IDOT indicating your concerns as they go into, hopefully soon to go into the design phase 2. So, Dave.
As Mike said, I'll be touching on some of the history of the roadway, and really trying to explain the phasing of the IDOT process. You hear phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. What does that mean? I'll try to help explain that to you. Also, we know there's been quite a few emails from residents sharing their input. We thank you for your input. That is why IDOT goes through this process, to ask for those comments, to go through that. They don't just hire a consultant, design the project, and build it. This is a very important part of the process, so we thank you all for coming out tonight.
Dave, is phase 2 engineering funded?
Phase 2 engineering is funded, not entirely in one budget year. It's over 2 budget years, but very recently, in the last couple of weeks, we got notification that it is funded, phase 2. There is a shortfall in terms of the land acquisition monies, but in terms of the actual phase 2 study, yes, the money has been allocated.
Okay, and then is this all tied in potentially to the capital bill?
This funding is not.
No, to actually build the road.
I don't think it's at that stage.
Yeah.
Right.
We're quite a few years away from
Right.
that stage.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
so it wouldn't be in any current capital bill.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So there's 3 phases. Phase 1 is the process we're in right now. Phase 1 is really the preliminary engineering phase. IDOT, and in their public meetings, they've shared the different things that they're looking for. They're soliciting public participation in these different items. You know, safety needs for the corridor. How many lanes should this be? They do traffic counts and they figure out how many lanes this roadway needs to be. What are the access for the different businesses and residents of the community? They talk to us in terms of drainage, where detention's going to go, where the floodplains are, wetlands, etc. And then median types. Do you want a barrier median? Do you want stripe median? Do you want no median? They ask those questions. Intersection problems. Are there any intersections that they haven't studied that should be studied? One of the emails we received was Grosse Pointe Boulevard. We have talked to IDOT. IDOT is looking at that and performing a traffic warrant analysis to see whether a traffic signal is warranted. You can't just add a traffic signal. It needs to meet certain conditions. They're looking into that for us. Environmental concerns, noise impacts, air quality, those type of things. They will be looking at noise impacts as part of this project. The first thing that they need to do before they do that study is figure out the center line of the roadway. As part of this public process, they will be determining where the center line of the roadway should be. Once they know that, then they will go through the process of figuring noise impacts. They will come back to us and tell us what their findings are. The study is not anticipated to be completed until early 2010. It's a part of the process. We've heard a number of comments for pedestrian and bicycle needs. Specifically, we're hearing this stretch right here. We need to be able to go from Grosse Pointe through town all the way to Milwaukee Avenue. The village is committed. We think that is a very important part of the process. We've shared that with IDOT. Certain stretches do not have bikeways. The stretch right here is in the village of Indian Creek. We've reached out to them. We've encouraged them to include that in their approvals or their recommendations to IDOT. There's also a small little stretch between Oakwood and Butterfield Road. That's in the village of Mundelein. We've talked to them. They're supportive of that. In terms of the village of Indian Creek stretch, they just don't have the money. They're supportive that pedways should go in. They just don't have the funds, so we're trying to work through that with them. Typically, phase 1 study takes approximately 36 to 48 months, and the final product is a preliminary engineering plan that is finalized, and then they can move to phase 2. Again, public input is very important. That's why we're glad you're emailing, participating in the public meeting process, and sharing your input. Okay, where do we go next? After this is phase 2. Phase 2 is the design engineering phase. They put together engineering plans, bidding documents, so that they can bid the project out for construction. They're not into the phase 2 process. We've heard recently, as I advised the mayor, that funding has been approved. Let's see. We determined the right-of-way as part of the phase 1 study, and this process takes generally 18 to 24 months in an ideal situation. As you can tell from the phase 1 study, normally, these are ideal conditions. The phase 1 study has taken much longer than what we anticipated, but that is a good thing because you get more public input. Where do we go after that? Phase 3 is the construction phase, and In this project, it starts in Mundelein. It goes through our Indian Creek, our village, and Lincolnshire, and different segments will be constructed. All of this project, when it eventually makes it to that step, will likely not be constructed in one full segment. It'll be a series of segments. I don't know if it's 1 or 2 or potentially 3, but that's down the road. We expect that each segment would take about 18 months for them to get through relocating utilities and doing the actual construction and restoration. History. The village has worked with IDOT for many years on this. In terms of the first correspondence I know of is in June of 1988, there was a letter sent to IDOT asking that they look into widening Route 45. So it's been over 20 years. You know, the village board has been supportive of a number of projects. People have contacted us as far as widen 53. We think 53 needs to be done. We think 45 needs to be done. We think there's a number of roadways that need to be improved. Okay. So why do I think the roadway needs to be widened? Why does IDOT think the roadway needs to be widened? Typically, when you get to a certain amount of traffic, and here the numbers are up here, 2-lane roadway capacities are typically exceeded at 14 to 18,000 vehicles. The 2002 traffic counts are showing 22,600 vehicles. So we're over the threshold, the 14 to 18,000. We're at these numbers right now. What happens when capacities are exceeded on a roadway? Why is it important to go from 2 lanes to more lanes? You will find that people will start going into turn lanes, and they will go past the striped area, and they will try to go into another lane or driving along striped medians, etc. And those are characteristics when we start seeing that roadways are exceeding their capacity, and it starts causing safety issues.
Can we ask questions as you're going through the demonstration?
If you have a question now, I certainly can answer.
So 2002, have you done that study since Fairway Drive was put in?
We have not. They have not. The answer to it is, if you look at the numbers, 22,000. If we did more current counts, we doubt that they would go down. If they did go down, maybe they would go down 2,000 cars. So you're at 20,000 cars. You're still well above the 14,000 to 18,000. And once we get through the process, it's still going to be a number of years, and there's going to be more and more cars on the road.
You know, considering the impact of the project, I think taking a swag is something that shouldn't be done.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what he's saying.
Considering the impact of the project and cost, taking a swag at that, I don't think is appropriate. I think we should see that study done with Fairway Drive in.
And maybe if I could, let me answer this one. And what we'll do at the end, let me go through my presentation. John will be able to answer questions too. And maybe what we do is we'll have you walk up to the mic so you can be heard by the board and myself and John. And we'll try to answer all those questions. So let me answer yours, since you did ask the question. In terms of the traffic, I don't think it's a swag by any imagination. The numbers have been counted previously in 2002. We will look at the newer traffic counts, but I know from experience it's not going to drop down below these thresholds of 14 to 18,000. But we need to go through that step. Okay. So. In terms of communicating what we would like to see in this project with IDOT, the first study was started in 2002, the phase 1 study. They had a public input meeting in December 2nd, 2003, and the more recent one was May 19th, that a lot of you attended and gave your comments based on the refined plan. In terms of going through this, in terms of the 2003 meeting, I looked back at questionnaires and the summaries. And a lot of the things that are being discussed right now were discussed back then. And a lot of the comments that were shared are similar. The difference is before they didn't have the right-of-way figured out. The more refined plans show the right-of-way. Everyone here, including myself, knows more as far as how it may impact your specific property because it shows right-of-way, potential easements, etc. But here's some of the findings. Back in 2003, one of the questions IDOT asked of all of us, do you want a landscape barrier median? Do you want a striped paved median? No median at all. And it's hard to read, I apologize for that. But within Vernon Hills, 41% of the people responding said they would like some sort of barrier median. So the reason that IDOT put that on the plan was based on those the questionnaires. Does that mean IDOT is going to do that? No, they're going through the process. They've added to the plan. They're showing what impacts it would be. They had another public meeting, and they're asking, what do you think? So we're hearing from different people their different input. Another question, do you want a sound wall along the corridor? Half the people said yes, half the people said no. So IDOT needs further input. What do you want? Landscape summary, this is very understandable. 93% of the people said we would like additional landscaping beyond the normal IDOT policy. We understand that. Everyone wants additional landscaping and looking at buffers. So at this point, John will be able to answer some questions. I'll assist also. And if you would like, we can start asking questions in any order you like. Just come up, and if you could say your name and your address and ask your question. Thank you.
Teresa Calabrese, 405 Ashwood Court in Westwood subdivision, Vernon Hills. I just wanted to ask what our options are for the 1,200 feet of sidewalk that'll be missing out here in Indian Creek. I know it's not Vernon Hills, but I'm separated from the metro station. My son can't ride his bike to school, won't be able to get to the new library because we can't go through the train tracks through Westwood, and we can't take Butterfield because there's no sidewalk crossing at the railroad tracks. If you crossed over, you can't cross back. And I got an estimate that the cost of that 1,200 feet of sidewalk is around $100,000. I appreciate that Indian Creek doesn't have the funds, but this project is not happening anytime soon, so I don't know what our options are to encourage them to fund that, because right now it's their burden. It's not really IDOT's burden to fund that. And my other point was that drainage is an issue of this, and that's why the cost is so expensive for $100,000 for the 1,200 feet. And it seems insane to stop the drainage and the bike path sidewalk for 1,200 feet because of that issue. So just want to put that out there. And if there's options for us, petitions, whatever, for Indian Creek, or to the state to fund it, or whatever needs to happen, we would like communication on that.
Absolutely, and I did receive your emails, and in terms of that, we've talked with the Village of Indian Creek. Their initial verbiage was, we don't want sidewalks or bike paths. At the last meeting, John and I talked with their village engineer, and in the discussions, they changed their language to say they're supportive of the bike paths. Okay. It's just a funding issue for them. So as part of the process, it's very important to have the sidewalks, the bike path. That is something that we'll be pushing with them, and IDOT will be pushing with them. I'm sure we have more people who would like to come up.
Indian Creek, did they get any money from their developers that were putting in these homes over here?
Yeah. You know, the courts of Indian Creek have a sidewalk system on 45. The other one further
like
to the
$700,000 homes over here.
One did. One only went halfway. To answer the question.
Why don't I get things started, maybe, John? I'll ask some questions. One of the major ones is, is why can't you move the road closer to the cemetery?
Actually, if I could, I'll provide a little bit of input on that sidewalk issue, because I think it is an important issue. It's a good issue. The thing about sidewalks is the current policy is that we pay 50-50 for new sidewalks with any major reconstruction project like this one. And you had noted $100,000 for a new sidewalk because of the drainage issues and things like that. Well, a lot of the actual construction cost of the drainage issues and things like that would be actually covered with the actual construction project. So that we actually just charge for the actual concrete. And then we split it 50-50. So the cost, you won't see a $100,000 cost for 1,200 feet of sidewalk. It'll probably be a lot less. So I don't know the exact number of that. It's roughly $5 a square foot, maybe it's a little bit more, maybe $8 a square foot, or what our current estimates are. So cut that in half, and it's substantially lower than $100,000, and it's a lot easier to do when we're already out there doing our embankment, putting in our drainage pipes and things like that. So that's just, I thought it's worth noting right off the bat. So as far as funding, though, again, it's 50-50, but there are oftentimes there are some alternative programs like the ITEP grants. There's some, I think it's called Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program funds, which are for bicycle paths, things like that. There's CMAQ grant opportunities, which are federal dollars through this through the Chicago Metropolitan Area for Planning. There are different opportunities that potentially could be looked at from the village's perspective, and/or with Vernon Hills' help to potentially get some funding to help fund some of these things. So,
yeah, my concern is that I don't think they really want it, so they're not going to probably advocate research for that. And I want to make sure someone is advocating for that.
Right. So that's something that we can continue to work with either Vernon Hills or any other entities. So.
You say it's the 50-50 policy.
And if you could walk up, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
If you could speak into it, so thank you.
You say this is a 50-50 policy. Since it's a state road and it goes through multiple towns, how do we get that policy changed? Whose policy is that, and how do we change it? Since it's a state road, I think the state should just take over instead of trying to have all the different communities agree or come up with all these different ideas. One person might want it on the north side, one person might want it on the south side, one person might not want it at all, one might want bike lanes, might want sidewalks. If this is a state road, how do you change the policy so the state would just take it over and put the bike lanes in?
That was probably above my pay grade, certainly, and it's something that you would have to take up with probably our central office and the policy division. We could certainly talk offline to talk about ways to have that happen, but honestly, I don't know all the ins and outs and how to change that policy. But it's been in place for a long time. But the primary reason for the 50-50 cost sharing historically has been so that that whoever requests the sidewalk is accountable for the sidewalk, maintains the sidewalk. They actually have to take up long-term maintenance of it and things like that. So by getting a partner into the process, it does put some onus on them to make sure that it's maintained and it's something that's a need rather than just something that at the time might just sound like a good idea. So that's typically how it was. Certainly the whole process, the whole bike path policy, sidewalk policy is evolving. There is a complete streets policy out there that is advocating for more sidewalks and bike paths and things like that. But the DOT at this point does not have a policy yet in response to the complete streets, but we are working on that, and our cost participation policy could change. So, but at this time, it's 50-50, and that's what we're kind of working from. But maybe by the time this actually goes to construction, it could look different. It could be less cost participation. So at this point, I really can't shed any more light on it. So.
And if this was constructed as part of the project, Indian Creek would probably have to kick in. Their 50% share would be about $12,000. So I don't see this as being insurmountable. I think it's gonna be addressed.
Yeah, and we would send a letter to the Village of Indian Creek at the appropriate time, or even prior to that, to let them know what that cost would be. So, maybe it isn't, if it's $10,000 or $12,000, maybe that's not an insurmountable amount to be able to find resources to come up with. But so we'll certainly work with the communities.
You want to answer the
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, speak to, you know, we can kind of intersperse it. Obviously, I have a lot of the concerns enumerated, but anybody jump in, we can add however you want to do it, Mayor. If you want to have people ask the questions or whatever format.
Median question, because
the median and the right-of-way issue with the cemetery, both kind of as a combination question.
This question answered. I think that was one.
That's a big one.
Okay, so the question is,
why can't you move the entire right-of-way closer to the cemetery or into the cemetery, one, and then, John, maybe if you can explain the whole thing with the barrier median, can that be shrunk, and can also the pedestrian bike path be brought closer to the road? In other words, can you move that whole right-of-way further away from Centennial Crossing?
The answer in general is yeah, we can look at options. One thing that we wanted to note is when we did our early data collection, had some initial meetings with, in particular, the cemetery property owners or the management. There are graves that are essentially at the property line, which is right along Route 45. There are marked graves as well as unmarked graves. There may actually be several what they call pauper graves, which were grave sites that are unmarked for people that were maybe didn't have enough money to actually have a dedicated grave site, or potentially unknown folks. And so these pauper graves are, as based on the information we have and they were able to provide, are right along that property line. So actually moving the road into that is a relatively complex problem, and it's something that we'd rather not delve into trying to move graves of people that that may be very difficult to, first of all, identify, as well as contacting heirs and things like that. It's a very complex and expensive issue, and we typically try to avoid that and treat it like a sensitive environmental resource or a property. But that doesn't mean we can't come up with other solutions to this issue, this concern. Some of the things that we could look at doing could involve, well, first of all, talk about the barrier median. Our policy for a barrier median is typically 22 feet wide. That allows enough space for a vehicle to, say, get into a left turn lane and then be able to make a U-turn with just a slight bump out in the median or the edge of pavement. A large passenger vehicle could easily do that with no encroachment and no issues, no concern. The other thing that a 22-foot wide median allows is that when you are, for example, if you are pulling out of a property, for example, this cemetery access, you could actually pull out and park in the median and wait for a gap in traffic if you had to. Your car would actually fit within that space. So you have ability to make a two-step merge into traffic, which will allow you to find those gaps in traffic when traffic is very busy in both directions. We could look at a narrower median, but obviously that reduces that ability to make those two-stage turns. But the median width to maintain a barrier median, the absolute minimum would be probably in the range of 16 feet, which is roughly 6 feet less than what we would currently show. And 16 feet would still allow you to have a little bit of a median here, a wide enough median here that you could actually put some grass in, some light landscaping, and then the alternative is something like a 12-foot median without any barrier. It's the 16 feet is the minimum to maintain a boulevard type of configuration, and while also retaining your left turn lanes, for example, for the cemetery here. So that's a possibility. There are some options there that we can look at, which would shift the alignment, say, 6 feet further to the south. There are also our design. We went ahead understanding that there's an existing sidewalk along that north side, but that sidewalk is generally 5 feet. And for us to accommodate a multi-use path, that requires 10 feet minimum. So we went ahead and just showed for illustration purposes, was a 10-foot path following along the roadway, right next to the roadway, with a minimum 5-foot separation per our policy. But that doesn't mean that we can't look at that a little bit closer and perhaps follow the same exact alignment that the current sidewalk is, but go in and make it wider, make it a 10-foot wide path, kind of meandering along the roadway, which would potentially have the ability to save some of the existing trees that are between the sidewalk, the existing sidewalk, the widened sidewalk, and the new edge of pavement. That's something we can look at. I can't tell you for certain now how many trees would be saved or if any would be saved. I would have to, we have to look at that. But that is something that we can evaluate. There's other alternatives that due to the grade change or I guess the topography, I believe the property or the land, the lay of the land on that north side is a little bit, I believe it's a little bit higher. Maybe someone could correct me. It's a little bit higher. So there is a possibility that maybe using small, short retaining walls, like landscape block retaining walls, to kind of reduce the need to cut back and kind of match the road, edge of road topography with the existing topography. So there's a possibility for some retaining wall to be put in. So there's several alternatives that we are going to be looking at over the next weeks, months, to kind of determine what we can fit in, what we can accommodate, and how many trees we will be able to minimize and potentially be able to make commitments and note on the plans which trees we're trying to save and whatnot. So there are opportunities, but right at this point in time, I don't have a plan, a solution, but the intent is that once we kind of go through these iterations, we will certainly share them with the village staff to get a consensus on the direction that it's going. How does it look? Is that what we're trying to achieve here? And then at the next public meeting, which at this point in time we're envisioning probably early 2010, early next year, we'll have a public hearing kind of showing the revised plans, the 85-90% complete design, one more round of comments, and make any revisions after that and finalize and approve the project. So does that answer the question to the village's satisfaction so far?
One quick question on the median. The median, is a barrier median an absolute? Would a simple 5-lane cross-section reduce some of the amount of right-of-way needed? Because when I look at this, 40% wanted a landscape median. That also says to me 60% didn't. So, I mean, that's, pretty simple math. And since we've seen several roads in the area that have had those medians, to me, that's just an extra cost and an extra maintenance cost that are, I think, a waste of money after seeing what's happened on Butterfield Road. Is that barrier median an absolute? I mean, because 60, 22, there are a lot of places that isn't, is strictly 5-lane cross-section pretty much. Correct.
No, the barrier median is not an absolute. It is an added measure of safety. It does reduce the potential for head-on collisions, any run off the roads. It certainly helps manage access to properties. You put vehicles into turn lanes, into dedicated turn lanes at spots where people can expect to see cars, and that's kind of the one, a couple of the benefits. Also, a barrier median. There's long stretches of here where there are no driveways. There's no need for access. So providing a grassed surface or a landscape surface reduces the amount of what we call impervious or paved area, which reduces the amount of water which goes into the storm sewers, and that reduces the amount of water that goes into the streams and things like that. So having and that's in the spirit of the Lake County Storm Management Commission, Lake County SMC's criteria and goal for reducing the amount of runoff into the watershed. So it's not a given that it has to be barrier median, but there are certainly benefits to having it. And at the very least, as far as maintenance, that if it's not maintained, IDOT does do their routine mowing of the grasses, but certainly a well manicured median does have the aesthetic, I guess the aesthetic improvement. What's the cost of a barrier median? Barrier median, I don't know the exact cost of it, but let's put it this way: it's cheaper than putting in 12 foot of 18 inches of pavement. So it's it is cheaper to actually build the barrier median. It does require maintenance, which is a cost, but the actual construction is cheaper. You end up reducing the amount of pavement you put out there, as well as the amount of the size of the storm sewers that would be needed to accommodate that additional runoff. So
We got it, ma'am. Yes. Come on. Yeah.
My name is Frances Masloff. I live at 490 South Superior Street in Centennial Crossing. I have a question. I've listened very patiently while you've explained why you cannot go into the cemetery, et cetera, et cetera. I would like to know if Centennial Crossing is the only home development area that is as close to 45 as it appears. Are there, because it seems that if you're going through the different towns or villages, you're going through more industrial area rather than residential. Wouldn't it just be easier from Rainey to Fairway to narrow that down, make it a 2-lane highway, and then open it back up again? You do that on many times when you're traveling, that you see signs that it's been narrowed. Then you don't have to worry about it. It's just a short piece of land. I would also like to respectfully submit that if you're going to widen 45, the entire area, that something be done between Fairway and Huron, that opening, and then going down Rainey into Stone Fence. We allow that to be open, and now it's become a speedway for people coming down from Fairway, going all the way down on Rainey into Stone Fence. Close Stone Fence. It's not fair to the people who have bought property in there. It was originally, we were told they were going to keep that area open for emergency vehicles. There will be emergency vehicles there because people are going to get killed. Thank you.
Okay, I guess to answer your first question, the reason we're going with 2 lanes in each direction is because of the traffic volumes that are out there. We will certainly, when I get back to the office, I'll double check on the ADTs. I would have to believe that we have something more current than 2002 data with 22,000 cars per day. Our IDOT website is pretty current, so I can actually just jump on the web when I get home and check the IDOT website and pull up that stretch of road. I'll be able to find out tonight. But I would imagine that it is probably right around there. I don't think that there's been any significant reduction of ADT from that point, but we would have to double check that. And certainly when we came to the public meeting or public hearing, we would have that information. But as David suggested, the existing volumes, if they were 22, if they came down to say 20, 19,000, that is already above the threshold for a 2-lane roadway to operate at safe conditions. And then when we do a capital improvement like this, we like to try to ensure that we get 20 years, or we plan for the 20-year horizon. So we also then take the existing numbers and then we project them forward based on the land use plans and things like that along throughout the region, and those numbers, whether they increase 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, they're likely going to increase. That's been pretty much the trend for a long, long time in the Lake County area, as well as in the 6th County area. The projections typically are increasing.
And a partial answer to your question, that was why I asked what I did about the median, because before the Rainey property was developed, we got right away, and that was a deal breaker with Town and Country, that we got right away. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, the right away IDOT was asking for at the time, we got substantially more than what IDOT was asking for because of exactly understanding that kind of construction thing. And it would have been irresponsible of us up here to allow any homes to be built on the Rainey property without first getting that right-of-way. Because you're right, there are places down along here, when they talk about acquiring right-of-way, they're more talking about other places along here, not in Vernon Hills. Because as Ryder Estates was built, as all these have been built along here, that has always been a deal breaker. You have to give us more than IDOT wants for right-of-way because of the eventual building of this. And that's why I asked about the median was, I don't think it's necessary to exceed the right-of-way that exists, other than for a construction easement.
And I'm sorry, and just real quick, as far as adding to that, as part of the planning for Centennial Crossing, IDOT at that point was looking for their existing half right-of-way, so half of the roadway, was 50 feet. As part of Centennial Crossing, in that time along the corridor, they were asking for 10 feet more of right-of-way on one side of the roadway, all along the corridor whenever development occurred, to have a 60-foot half right-of-way. They knew of the cemetery and those issues, so as part of Centennial Crossing, they asked for an additional 15 feet beyond that. So beyond what was out there, they received 25 feet of right-of-way, and then as part of the planning process, there was a 30-foot outlot created. So those are the dimensions that we had worked through. In terms of Stone Fence Farm connecting to Centennial Crossing, I know there's different feelings on that. My feeling is we looked at Stone Fence Farm and trying to get a traffic signal at Stone Fence Farm. There is a certain spacing required between traffic signals. Typically, it's a quarter-mile spacing. In this instance, between Deer Path and Stone Fence Farm, it's about 600 feet. It's very substandard. So what we tried to do to make it safe for our residents is to have another connection to get them to a newer traffic signal, and that was the one placed at Metra. It was very interesting at the first public meeting. One of the discussions I was listening to was a discussion between a Stone Fence Farm resident and a Centennial Crossing resident about my streets and you using my streets and back and forth. People have their opinion on that. I understand that. But the interesting part was there was a resident who lived on Deer Path, and he overheard the discussion, and this was before Fairway Drive was built, and he said, well, how do you guys get to the mall? They go right down Deer Path. So I guess why I share that with you is we look at them as public streets. We don't want a lot of additional traffic, but we're looking at one neighbor subdivision feeding into another, and that's my input.
Why don't you come up? Yeah.
That's my point.
Okay, well, folks, this gentleman's
I want to
add
to your point. My name's Andy Mass, 99 East Depot. I think you guys have to look at if you're going to, obviously something's going to happen here, but it's got to be done right. And I think there's been a lot of other mistakes made before this with Fairway Drive, the train station. And you're absolutely right. I walk my dog. I see you walking your dog every day. It's a nightmare. There's kids from Stone Fence going 40 miles an hour around down Rainey going to Stone Fence, and your traffic study chief didn't do anything. Whatever you came up with was not accurate because they're going over 35 miles an hour, close to 40. Please. You don't need to have a cop car there because they'll slow down when they see a cop car. You need to have someone just walking up and down between 4:30 and 6:30 and actually see it. And somebody's going to get killed or hurt seriously, and it has to be fixed. So if we're going to do this, let's correct the problems we have first, which is Fairway Drive and people going down Rainey to cut through, and that has to be stopped. You're going to have a lawsuit on your hands one day. Secondly, if you're going to expand 45, it can't be 45 miles an hour because that means 55 miles an hour. It has to be lower. Look at 22. They expanded it, but the citizens demanded it be lower speeds. And Lincolnshire enforces that like there's no tomorrow. And Vernon Hills has to do the same thing, especially in our neighborhood and around our neighborhood, because it's young children.
And to add to that...
Wait, no, hold on, I'm not done. First of all, you're not a resident here, in this neighborhood here. So it's easy for you to say that Stone Fence and, it's public roads, but it's dangerous. And you don't see it. And you should have a plainclothes police officer walk up and down Rainey between 4:30 and 6 it's dangerous. And the U-turns out of the train station, coming out of the train station and going around Rainey they fly around that. Surrounding that are kids that are under 5 years old. It's wrong. They should have designed it properly where you put the exit outside of where the new parking lot is. Bottom line is, this has to be thought through better than it is. It can't, we can't make the same mistakes that the city and the state has made in the past, and we have to think it through because the other projects haven't been thought through.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Mary Scudella. I live at 578 South Central Park Place in Centennial Crossings. And I completely agree with what's been said. I sit right next to Route 45. There's my house, an alley, the small amount of berm that's there, and 45. And every day I can look out my living room or my family room window and I can see the number of cars that have gone by. I've lived in my home for 10.5 years, and I can tell you that the amount of traffic has significantly reduced. 22 has been widened, Fairway Drive has been widened or created, and I personally believe that there is a lot less traffic there than there was at 2002 and up until 22 was widened. So I do think that it is very important to do another traffic study. The only time that I see traffic held up in front of my house is because of the metro station. It is 100% because of the way that the gates go down. When the gates, and you've got probably all know this, but when the metro train going northwest approaches the metro station, it stops at the station, it signals the gates to go down. The train stops, it unloads and loads passengers, the gate goes up, then it goes back down again. So the amount of time that it's down for is more than the amount of time that it takes for the metro train to go across Route 45. So in my opinion, until you address that issue, widening 45 is going to do nothing. What IDOT said at the meeting is that instead of the 4 cars that get past there now, 8 will go past. Yay? Not to be sarcastic, but I don't know how else to act about it, because it does not seem to me that that's going to solve the problem, that just widening it is not going to solve the problem. Until you address that gate issue, it's not going to help anything. In terms of the cemetery, and maybe this is beating a dead horse, but I've lived in my home for again, 10.5 years, and I'm curious as to why new graves have been buried in that area. My husband walked the dog over there, and we only see 10 marked graves. So granted, I hear this whole pauper term, stacked graves, hard to find, heirs and whatnot. My daughter is 9, my dog is 10. My next door neighbors who are here tonight have young children. There are countless children in our neighborhood who are living, pets who are living. And if anything happens to any of those children because somebody's kicked a soccer ball, because we live in a traditional neighborhood design community, if anybody kicks a soccer ball, throws a frisbee, a dog gets off of a leash and goes into that roadway, my heart is going to fall out. It's ridiculous to see that and I don't know how I can say this in any other way other than to be crass about it, but that dead people have more rights than the living. And I'm very, very concerned about that. In addition, again, the median, if you look at 22, if you look at 83, and you look at the lack of adequate planting on those medians. I know that some of the board members have shared that they're not necessarily for the medians. I can't see where aesthetically or in a safety way that those medians are going to provide benefit to the travelers on the road or the people in the adjacent neighborhood. And I'm very concerned about that. Then I guess lastly, the speed limit I want to agree with. I don't know that at that meeting, I've been to both meetings, and I don't know that at either meeting the speed limit was touched on. Do we have preliminary speed limit estimates for what is going to be on 45?
Typically, what we design for is to accommodate the existing speed limits, or maximum in this situation would be 45. So if there was a speed limit higher than 45, say 50 or 55, the maximum speed limit on a curbed roadway such as this that's proposed would be 45. So I honestly don't recall what it is right out here, but if it's existing, then the maximum would be 45.
Okay. And I guess in terms of the study that was done with that 41% of people wanting a barrier median, I realized that, you know, when Town and Country built Centennial Crossings, this letter was supposedly there that we all signed off on, saying that we realized that 45 was going to be widened. There's nothing in that letter that ever stated that it would come closer to our neighborhood. No one ever said in the purchase of the home that the space from where the road ends to the bike path, or from the bike path to the alleys or people's homes, that is right of way, state right of way. So I don't think any of us, and I don't mean to speak for other people, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any of us really thought that that meant that we were going to have a road, if 45 was ever widened, that it meant that that road was going to come closer to our homes.
Actually, I did call and ask, because I remember signing the letter, and I was told about 5 foot. You were told
5 feet is a lot different than what's on the plan.
I was told 5 foot, and I was told that by the village engineer.
What was that?
How long ago was this?
First of all, I'm sorry, I came in late, and I travel a lot, so I missed much of this, both tonight and other times. But I see a lot of things about surveys. So has anybody asked if they wanted this thing built in the first place? The people who live there are the ones who should have some say in this as to whether you even do this. And that seems to be beyond everybody's thoughts here at the moment. But more important than that, I asked the village engineer specifically how far you were going to widen 45 on my side, because we live at 42, which butts up against 42 Depot, which bumps up against 45, and that was a big concern when we bought the lot. And I was told specifically, maybe 5 foot. We'd like to get a little bit wider and leave a soft shoulder like there is now, because if I had been told anything other than that, I wouldn't have bought the house in the first place.
Well, the 75 feet
Sir,
of right-of-way
that
was
did
there
not
from
take
day
place.
one.
I'm sorry?
There were 75 feet of right-of-way there from day one. That was a deal breaker for Town and Country.
I knew that that's what that was going to be used for.
That's
not in that letter. That's not in that letter that any of us supposedly signed, that chunk of land was actually state right-of-way. So if any of us, you know, when I looked at that letter, I remember specifically signing a letter about Fairway. I knew that that was happening. But even if that little blurb that we saw that was passed around from the village engineer, that I don't think anything on there specific, it was very vague. It was like a one-line little thing that said, by the way, someday they might widen 45. It didn't say, someday they might widen 45, and by the way, that chunk from the bike path to the street is state right away. It never said that. And I'd like to...
Who did you think it belonged to?
You know, I guess I assumed it was village, maybe. And I think if you were to go back and you were to say, what percentage of you want a barrier median, knowing what we know now, you would not get anywhere near 41%.
More than 13 people here, which constituted 40. Oh yeah, I don't think. Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah,
that's okay. I know the numbers on the.
Trust me, we would not have let them build your homes without getting the right of way first.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Okay.
if I
Go
could.
ahead, Dave. Just
Good evening.
If I could, really quick. Sir, in terms of that discussion, that never took place because I never had those details back then, whether or not it was moving 5 feet or not. And I'll finish. You talked earlier, so let me finish. There was no way for me to determine when did this conversation take place?
July of 1999.
Yeah. In July of 1999, I did not have the details on the plans to be able to tell you that it was 5 feet. What I was telling people at the time when Centennial Crossing was being built, we shared the letter of awareness saying that the roadway would be widened at some point in time, and that the village was supportive of it. In terms of where the roadway was going to be widened, I knew at that point that the cemetery was there. They asked for the additional 25-foot half right-of-way into Centennial Crossing, and they weren't going to go spend money to acquire the property to the south. So in terms of where would the roadway be widened, it would have had to be at least one more lane and probably 2 more lanes, and that was going to be to that direction. So there's no way there was a dimension of 5 feet. You didn't have that conversation with me, sir.
Yes, ma'am. You want to state your name for the record, please?
My name is Wendy Hangebrock. I live at 72 East Depot Street. We live in the middle of the cul-de-sac in Centennial Crossing. I wrote letters reflecting a lot of the interests of the neighbors. I sent a letter to Mr. Mustafa, and Mike, you were copied on it. So rather than get into all those issues, I just want to make more of a request or a plea. You can tell there's a lot of passion in this neighborhood, and that's what makes it so great. It is a wonderful neighborhood, Centennial Crossing. It has such great character, such great aesthetic quality to it, and a major part of that is that walkway along 45. Those beautiful old trees. So many people use that walkway as a bike path. It's fantastic. If you walk it on the weekends, you just see kids, families. It's really a major part of the neighborhood. And to take down those old trees, in my opinion, would be a crime. You know, there's so few of them left. If you could make it a priority, not just a possibility, to preserve that area, that's what we'd really love to hear you say. Say those words. It's a priority. We're going to preserve that. And I will tell you, my husband and I routinely pick up litter around the perimeter of our neighborhood. We have picked up, we estimate in 10.5 years, over 2 tons of litter. By widening 45, that will exacerbate that problem. And I actually have a proposal. I suggest you put in place a $1,000 litter fine and enforce it. You want to raise some money? You'll raise a lot of money. And the litter we have picked up is atrocious. But we pick it up because we care about the neighborhood and we care about the community. It looks beautiful when it's clean, and it looks like a garbage pit when it's not. So that's just my comments.
Yeah, I just want to, I appreciate the fact that you like that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because there's some of us sitting up here can be blamed for it.
Thanks.
No, in all honesty. And we went through the,
great.
Yeah, well, here, and you guys, some of you know, I mean, Van Vlissingen wanted to put, industrial park, and they had, I think at one time, the first right of refusal, and then there was an issue about some people, someone who is I don't think lives in town anymore, but she wanted the 80,000 square foot lots. Some of you probably know who I'm talking about, because this was annexed in, it was annexed in as an R1 and blah, blah, blah. But, I'm happy you like the neighborhood, because it did turn out very nice, and the pocket parks, and you're back up to, the VHAC.
That's why it's so close-knit.
Well, that's fine.
It is.
Well, that's great. And there was a lot of time and effort put in by the board to design it, and tweak it and push, of course, Town and Country at that time. Okay. And anyway, yeah, I appreciate your comments. Anyway, somebody else wanted to come up, that's fine. Just,
I'd like to get what I said on the record, and I'm going to tell you.
And okay, your name again, sir?
My name is David Kempner. I live at 42 Depot.
Yes, sir. All right.
And the reason I know I had this conversation with you, and I was pretty specific about it, Mr. Brown, was the following. We lived along Butterfield across from Greg's Landing, which we really did not want to see go in. And we left there specifically because Greg's Landing was then, when they were going to widen Butterfield, the work was going to encroach on our property. And I wasn't about to have it happen again after I spent a lot of money on a house. And so I asked whoever I spoke with, and it may not have been you, it may have been an assistant of yours, I asked whoever it was I spoke with what the plans were. And I was told the best estimate you had was 5, at most 10 foot. It would nowhere need to be anywhere near 20 or 30 foot, because I looked at my lot and said if we lost 30 foot to the side of 45 from my house was going to be in 45. 45 was going to be where my house was going to be sitting.
Dave.
I appreciate you clarifying that. I do, because I know it wasn't 5, but thank you for your input.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Ed Brady, 299 East Huron Street. My house backs up to 45 as it exists today. And I have a question more for the board, theoretically speaking, is why do we want to take traffic away from Route 60 where our tax base comes from? Every time we talk to the village about, you know, where the taxes come from, they say we don't pay property taxes that go to fund the village activities. The taxes that we get come off of the business communities, which are primarily around Route 60. So what we're going to be doing is, by widening 45, is deterring traffic off of Route 60 down Route 45, which will keep people away from our tax base. Our tax base is going to go down, and as we funnel more people along 45, the traffic is going to be exactly the same. The amount of time it takes to get from Route 6083 to Milwaukee Avenue will be exactly the same, because we'll detour more traffic onto 45. So why do we want to do that?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Finnerty. I live at 320 East Huron. I am also a member of the Centennial Crossing Homeowners Association. I don't back up to Route 45, but I'm close to it. Wanted to thank everybody for showing up. We had 191 people sign a petition over the past couple of weeks. Wrote a lot of letters, hand-delivered it to IDOT. And there is a lot of passion around this. And what we're really trying to look at is not only the right-of-way and doing what's right, because if you take a look at that stretch, on the south side of the street, I think you may affect 1, maybe 2 residents between Fairway and Deer Path, versus all the residents that bump up along ours. I think there's 25, 27, plus stone fence. I just want you to think about, when you're talking about the right-of-way for that section, that is a huge residential area. And in terms of the grave sites, couldn't agree more with Mary in terms of 191 homes in our neighborhood. Most of them are young children. So think about absolutely the safety that's involved in that versus moving in the gravesite. Realize it's complex, but I also know that paupers, if they didn't have an heir to bury them, I'm not sure the heir is going to care now where they go. So really, really look at the fact that how residential it is on that side of the streets, particularly in that section. Last thing, I have an actual question versus a voicing and venting. In terms of a sound and visual barrier, whether that be a fence, whether that be a berm, where does that come in planning, and how and when will that decision be made?
The issue about noise, that is actually going to be evaluated as we move forward from here. We want to identify the alignment of the road, the configuration of the road, where the access points would be, if there's any changes to those access points, and then now we actually start looking at the noise analysis and doing the noise study. In general, the noise analysis, we evaluate the entire corridor, pick receptors and residential noise receptors, we call them, basically homes that are close to the road, and then use them in the distance that they are from the existing roadway. We look at the existing traffic. We project that, the 2030 projections. We use those numbers to evaluate what the existing traffic, traffic noise is, with the projected traffic volumes, the proximity of the road to the residences, and then we evaluate whether a noise wall is warranted. And the warrants have to meet not only the noise threshold criteria, but also cost per benefited residents. And basically what ends up happening, if you have long stretches of road, which perhaps this could be considered that you don't have a lot of driveways interrupting the wall, you can get a lot of cost, you can get a very good benefit cost ratio, because you have a lot of residences that would be be able to benefit from that noise wall. So that's the process that we'll be looking at. We'll be over the next several months, and by the time that we get to the public hearing, we'll actually be in a position to say, we'll probably have some sort of line or some sort of configuration that might show, all right, maybe a dark blue line, stretched from perhaps Fairway Drive to Ranney Avenue, maybe on that north side. If a wall's warranted, we would show that that's where the wall would go, and we would be looking for public comment on that idea. And we would do that for the entire project corridor. In other areas where you have lots of driveways, closely spaced, walls are just not practical or possible. Having to put in the openings for the walls make them unfeasible from a cost as well as from an effectiveness perspective. So, but we will be looking at that, and this area in particular certainly would be considered in our analysis. So that is something that would be taken into consideration.
So that decision is based on the noise analysis and based on any public input that you get in terms of the,
absolutely.
the structure itself.
Yeah, basically the noise analysis is a requirement per our National Environmental Protection Agency policy, the NEPA policy. So we would evaluate issues such as noise and air quality and things like that. Regardless of input, we would recommend them if they meet the warrants, but then it is up to local support to actually implement them. There are communities that don't want them, and there are communities that do, and we look to get buy-in from the community, from the residents, as well as the actual elected officials from all the communities to ensure that that's the direction they want to go. That's something they support and want the IDOT to invest in.
Okay, because the issue with us with the barrier is not just sound. I think sound is a huge concern for this, but the other is obviously aesthetics. And obviously, it is around safety as well. Again, you have a large young population in that community. We are a community. I don't know if you've driven through it. It's an alley-based community with very small yards. The idea is that you play in community areas. There's a very large park that backs right up to 45, and others, a pond that is very close. So a lot of community gathering areas where children play. So just be aware that that is the kind of community. It is not a gated private community. It is designed so that children are in public areas.
Yeah, one thing I can say, I can commit to that can state it is a priority for us to evaluate this issue and minimize the right-of-way. I can't promise that we will not need any right-of-way, but based on my just standing here looking at the exhibit, the existing right-of-way is this orange line right above the proposed path that we showed. I feel fairly confident that we would stay within that. We would be if we needed anything beyond that, if we actually need anything beyond that, it would only be to regrade or redesign or maybe reestablish the path. I talked about there's a 5-foot sidewalk out there. We may need to go beyond our right-of-way or beyond this orange line to get into those areas where the path is in fact outside the existing right-of-way. So we would need to get in there, reconfigure that path to make it a 10-foot standard path, and then the right-of-way would actually not be needed permanently. And I would imagine we're going to be able to pull that in and certainly stay out of this orange area, move it further south. I think, like I said, I think the next plan you see will be significantly different than this with regard to the encroachment to the north. But I can't say that it's not going to be wider. I mean, it is going to. It is going to
can I ask a question? Without the median, and you put in the 5-lane cross section. Is that 60 feet that's actually needed to do that?
Well, 60 feet is the 5 12-foot lanes, but then you have curb and gutter, which is another 2.5 feet on each side, so that's 55 feet. Plus you have areas for the sidewalks. So the sidewalk is a minimum 5 feet, which ideally is a minimum 5 feet away from that back of curb. So then you have another 10 feet on that. And if you do a bike path, it needs to be a minimum of 5 feet away from the roadway. But as noted here, I mean, the bike path kind of meanders on.
So what do you need, 60, 65? If you got 5 12-foot wide lanes, right?
Right. So that's.
And then you need, gutter and curb.
Yeah, so it's 55 plus a minimum of 10 foot, at least on the south side, to accommodate a sidewalk. So that's 65 feet. And then on the north side, whatever you need to regrade it and establish that bike path continuity at a minimum is what would be needed.
And there's 75 there.
So our 75 is half right away. That's 75 from center line. So there's additional right away south of the center line. significantly additional, because that 75 that I've been talking about all night is from the existing center line. So it was only a half right away. It was a 50-footer that we bumped up to 75, anticipating exactly this. So it isn't like that. That's what's that?
They're trying to take it
away.
Well,
It's already there.
now that's I hope they're listening to.
Yeah. But bottom line
that's
is,
why we're talking.
if you're correct with what you're saying about that and the distances, then I was right in saying that you will not in any way have to go beyond that orange line, because the 75 feet that we've been talking about is from the center line. There is an additional, probably 30 to 40 feet south of it. So you're looking at 115 to 120 feet of right-of-way.
Right.
Dave's got his hand up over here. Does this?
So, and really, where are we headed? I'm hearing your input. We're listening. One of the things that the village did after the last public meeting and before this one was we spent some time preparing. We understand what's important in terms of the buffer, trying to protect trees. How do we minimize impact? So the discussions that we're having with IDOT last week, the village went out and did a tree survey ourselves. We went and located all the trees. We looked at the quality, the species, location, put that a digital file. We're sending that to IDOT tomorrow. What do they do with that information? They put it on their engineering plan, and we're looking at, okay, some of the options here. If we have a barrier median, 22 feet is the usual standard. They can get a design exception to have it down to 16. So that saves you 6 feet. Sidewalk, shifting that on the south side, because if we were to maintain the south edge right of way and not go into the graves, how do we move that curb line closer to them, reduce the median, or go down to a stripe median instead of 22 feet? That would be 12 feet. So you're saving 10 feet there. We understand, and those are the things that IDOT and I will be sitting down on and seeing if we push it this way, what trees are we saving? What impacts would it have to Centennial Crossing? So each iteration, we will be able to determine how it would impact your subdivision. We're going through that process. And feel free to ask more questions.
Yeah, just come on.
I'll state my name. I'm Andrew Cutler. I live at 119 East Depot Street. I back to 45. I'm 2 houses from the stoplight. I am concerned mostly, I'm not against this at all, okay? I sit in that traffic every day and I'm not happy about it. So kudos for making the road bigger. It's about time. We need to have a bigger road. The reality, though, is the impact to Centennial Crossing and really to any neighborhood that is along the path here. We want to make certain that, as was said earlier, that the noise and the safety levels are considered. The trees. We've been in this community for 10 years. You guys worked very hard to make that community the way that it is. These trees are starting to mature. Everything that was planted 10 years ago, if you go and destroy it today and you go start to rebuild, you're not going to rebuild with the size trees that we have there, not to mention the old trees. Some of them are rotted out, but some of them are still good, viable trees. You're not going to replace us with that kind of greenery. So the question really becomes, how do we impact? I put together a whole thing that was, sent to Mike and everybody else. I'm real concerned about noise, but I don't want to have a big wall. Okay, I didn't move to this community so I could stare at a wall. I want to make certain that there's a nice berm. The only way you get berm, the way we've talked about it, is to make certain that the impact of the road, because a certain amount of berm that you could have for the size of the road, has to be done in the right way. There was discussion that was talked about with regard to the railroad crossing. I know that you haven't figured out what you're going to do with the railroad crossing, because part of this is going to go right through a gas station. So unless you're going to have people crashing into a gas station every time that they want to cross the railroad tracks, you're going to have to do something there. You're still going to have the same impact of the crossing gates going up and down. I know you don't want to spend the money to raise or lower the grade so that we could have, the road go underneath, which would solve all of the basic traffic problems that we have to begin with. But the reality becomes, how are we planning to utilize this space? I would like the IDOT to commission what the cost would really be to go through that cemetery process. I would like to know what the numbers are, because I got a feeling that the people in our community would probably put some money together to buy up the dollars that we need to be able to get you the land that you need, so we can go a little bit further south. We're not against this road, we're just against the road coming so far onto our property and taking away the things that are starting to grow and mature. That's really it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, there were a number of trees. I think that was maybe 2003, 2004. IDOT did replace some of those, and maybe helping as far as the tree study. You know, there's a lot of elms. There's some Norway maples. There's some aging trees. There's some quality hickory trees also. So we understand, yeah, the trees are very important. In that table I shared before, 93% of Vernon Hills residents said they want more landscaping. We understand that's important. And I think you may have a question.
Yeah, and while this gentleman's walking up, I know, you know, Butterfield Road was, you know, an extraction that we made from Cuneo and Zale and whoever else was involved there, and they paid, I don't know, what was it, $6 million, $8 million to do the widening of the road, which was a good thing because, you know, what didn't come out of it, I'm not sure we got any state money on that. I think that was all theirs. But what I want to say is that, you know, the landscaping that we did do, certainly from the railroad tracks up to Greg's Parkway, you know, I think is filled in pretty nicely, you know, and you don't have to agree with me, which wouldn't shock me, but, you know, the bottom line is that we've tried, you know, to do that, and we've tried to do, you know, I think a nice job along Fairway. So with that said, they have the floor, so.
Thank you. Name is Carmen Carroll. I live in Stone Fence Farms, 7 White Barn. And our property, the back of our property bumps up against 45 there. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the fence that goes along Stone Fence Farms there is going to be moved in 6 or 7 feet. Is that correct?
Where exactly are you at? Right over in this area?
Right here.
Why would there be a new fence? Well, because that might be out into...
If the fence is right along this existing orange line, honestly, I can't see where the wall is. It actually.
You're talking about the entrance. No. There's a fence all along.
Are you on the west side of?
I can see the skip dash of the existing bike path. So if it's just on the other side, it appears that it might need to be moved in. But honestly, that's prior to us looking at some of these alternatives that we've been talking about. So we are going back.
Maybe you can get my information and get back to me with an answer to the question then. That would be most helpful. But the point is we have 7 or 8 mature bushes and trees that act as a natural sound and sight berm that add value to our property. And it's obvious to me that if that fence is moved, you're going to have to uproot those, and you're going to probably replace them with something that is far less mature and less sightful. Okay, so are you willing to, spend the money to put something in that's equivalent?
Yeah, for any right-of-way acquisition that is needed for the project, and just a general statement, when we are pursuing and purchasing right-of-way, we do, in fact, do an appraisal of the property, which includes any fences along the property, any landscaping elements. Those are all included in the actual, purchase price or the negotiation price. I don't know that we necessarily go out there and actually replace them, because we'll pay you as the property owner to be able to do that and put in exactly what you want. But as part of our project, we do have a tree replacement policy. So as part of any tree removals, we replace them on a 1-to-1 basis for bald and burlap, and there's opportunities to place them.
So if I have a pine tree that's 80 foot tall, you're going to come in and put a pine tree that's 80 foot tall.
No, it's one for one, bald and burlap.
That's what I'm talking about, okay?
Right.
I mean, that's going to reduce the value of my property. I mean, will I see a tax reduction as a result of that?
You don't pay a property tax to Vernon Hills.
Pardon?
You do not pay a property tax to Vernon Hills.
But overall, you will.
Well, okay. You know, a good example is going back Grosse Pointe Village on 83. I don't know, you know, now that was probably another extraction from the developer? But Centex, where the trees that were put in, I believe, are white pines, and they were pretty big going in, and they grow. I'd have to go over there to look, but I mean, it's a significant, I think, aesthetic improvement.
It is.
Yeah. So I mean, and then I would hope we could negotiate to put in, you know, something that's got a certain maturity level and a certain I don't know. an 80-foot pine tree. I don't know.
Well, the other question is, you know, there's these other homes on the other side there. You know, that my understanding were going to be bought up and moved. Why not?
Yeah,
use that part as opposed to uprooting all the Stone Fence Farms.
Well, there's no question. Some of that we own, and you know, on the side of the street where the train station is. I think there's only one house we don't.
Right.
So, yeah.
And we're working on it.
So you're working on that?
Well, on that, on the one house.
On acquiring right away.
Don't tell that resident we're working on it.
Okay.
But
no, not that specific home.
So 2.5 years, that may be a possibility.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. That's all I have.
Well, trees has been, very seriously, we have purchased land down along the creek. We own a number of acres. In fact, didn't we just get somebody who had basically unbuildable land and just gave it to us?
Right.
And we said, sure, we'll take it. Because we've been taking as much land as we can along here, because one of our goals in the strategic plan when we started doing all this, and the design of that right-of-way was designed as the right-of-way was put together to try and minimize the amount of effect on trees in that. But one of our goals has always been, going right back to our strategic plan from 15 years ago when we annexed all the way to Half Day. One of the major reasons we did that was because we wanted to have control over a lot of this stuff in terms of how 45 would be rebuilt. And one of the goals was to maintain as rural a characteristic of it as we could, and that's why, as stuff has been built along here, as few trees as possible have been taken out. And in all the developments that have gone along here, very few trees have been taken out. And when we just talked to Hamilton Partners about what they want to do with Kelly's, the same thing. We identified, that's why we've done, as Engineer Brown said, such a heavy-duty tree study, is so that we can say, look, this one, this one, this one, you can figure out a way to build around them. And we've done that with several of the developments down here, and we'll continue to do that because we'd like to keep, even after this is widened, we wouldn't like it to look much different than it does now.
Yeah, and those trees, you know, like I said, are natural.
I agree.
Barrier.
I agree with you.
And I can sit on my back porch and I don't have to listen.
Hey, the guy at Portillo's was upset with me because I wanted to save 2 trees when he put in the 2 lanes. So, you know.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I apologize for monopolizing, but I want to give a
I'm sorry.
Well, you can come up, yeah.
Of a safety issue. This is a home that is located in between Deer Path and the mobile station. They have at least twice had someone veer off of 45, and there's a significant ditch there, down the ditch, through their back fence, their backyard fence, and into their backyard. It happened at least twice. My husband came upon them. We were walking to go get a Sunday paper, and we helped them pick up their fence, and they told us that it happened twice. So
yeah, the corner house there.
Exactly.
You know, that reminds me of a story. I used to live on Merrimack, and this is going back. Man, let's see. I live where I live now 20 years. So I lived at Merrimack 11, and one night it was rainy, 3 o'clock in the morning. There's knock on the door, and the doorbell rings, and it's one of Vernon Hill's finest. Did you hear anything? Anything happening out behind your house? I said no, and this was, before. I believe this was before Gates at the crossing, and somebody hit a moving freight train, and because it was kind of foggy and such, and I think it was a Torino, Ford Torino, and it actually was caught on the train and dragged down. My house was down 5-6 houses further than the house you're describing, So I know what it is that, to have a car in your backyard. It was kind of like,
water fountain at the end.
it was kind of interesting watching Ernie's remove it. But yeah, it's a good point. It's something that'll have to be. Yes, ma'am.
Can we just mention one thing about? Come on up. But we did something about that situation. A higher barrier curb was placed in there. We did about 4 or 5 years ago.
When they redid the
expressly
tracks, we put a taller curb, but absolutely that happened twice. Once right through their shed. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I got interrupted. I had 2 other things. We've talked about the cemetery piece. What we haven't talked about is the train station. So the other piece where we're concerned about the right-of-way is the area by the train station, because it looks like, based on the plans that we can see, the best that we can discern from that is that they're not moving into the train station space at all. And currently what is adjacent to our neighborhood by the train station is a parking lot and a very, very large green space and berm. So again, another great opportunity to push it towards the south and not towards neighborhoods and families. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that was the other right-of-way area that we were considering.
Yeah.
So that, you have a huge green space and a huge parking lot. That is prime for moving it. And then the last thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to say that, and Mike, you've been terrific. David, you've been terrific. We've been working with you guys on a lot of different things. The folks that we've talked to at IDOT have been very helpful. What I want to make it very, very clear is that if you think the path of least resistance is through Centennial Crossing, you're very wrong. As you probably can tell from tonight, we are incredibly passionate and incredibly proud of our community and incredibly worried about the safety and the aesthetics and the sound and the effects of this. So please, if you think at all that we're going to be an easy pass, you are dead wrong.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Back again, Ed Brady, 299 East Huron Street. One of the questions, I actually have 2 questions, is one is, where is the study that shows that the traffic, the amount of time that it's going to take to transgress this corridor is going to be less after the project is done than it is today?
That could be less.
Because my point is that all of the traffic is going to be coming from Route 60 or Route 22 now to this corridor, and nobody is going to save 1 ounce of time when we widen that road. So I'd like to see the study that shows that the amount of time it takes to get from Route 6083 to Route 21 Milwaukee Avenue is going to be less than it is today. The second thing is, why don't we still need to discuss the train, which is really the major barrier? What is the state of Illinois doing about alleviating that grade crossing there and solving the problem?
Well, the only thing that would solve that is grade separation. Because the train,
if the train
yeah, I know,
under
yeah, that's what I'm
or
saying.
over.
Grade separation. Yeah, under or over. Yeah.
Well, the roadway couldn't go over because you would eliminate deer path and probably even stone fence by the time getting onto 45. By the time you got far enough back to start your ramp, you would eliminate.
You'd eliminate.
Probably Hawthorne Club would not be able to get on 45, and I know deer path. I know for certain deer path wouldn't be able to.
Right.
What, going under it? Biggest problem going under it is that fuel line. There's a high pressure fuel line underneath that train that runs all the way from O'Hare to Milwaukee, and that would be a significant expense to go below that.
Yeah, I don't. Again.
I'd still like to look at.
Again, I'd still like to see the study that says that 1 minute is going to be saved on anybody's commute from about 60.
Well, let me tell you something about traffic studies.
Let me answer that. I don't know if it'll be saved, but I can guarantee you that the traffic will increase over the years as your children and my grandchildren grow up and start using the road.
Population. And I'd like to address that as a whole.
The whole point of doing this is to make it easier, right? Right. The whole point of doing this is to save people time on their route. And my point is, not 1 minute will be saved.
And just sitting there, and the traffic and the.
I can sit next to somebody or I can sit behind somebody, but I'm still sitting. I don't care if I'm sitting next to somebody or behind somebody.
Sorry, I'd like to really address your issue.
Yeah.
And as many as folks as are here from Centennial Crossing, I can guarantee you that there are 400 homes in Hawthorne Club. There are over 1,000 in Oakwood, Westmoreland, Cherry Valley that are dying to get this road widened so they can get out of their neighborhoods. You don't understand.
They won't get out because we're going to have more traffic.
No, sir. No, sir. That's not exactly what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that the traffic will flow freer down 45, and these folks will be able to get out of their neighborhood. They're as passionate about
Where's the
this.
IDOT study that shows specifically what I asked, which is the area that's being amended here from Route 6083 to Route 21 that says that you'll get there 1 minute faster? I want to see that. Study to have.
The best thing I can tell you is traffic engineers, traffic study engineers are people that I don't trust. And the reason I don't trust them is because, I'm going to tell you, because when we were pushing to have 22 widened, Lincolnshire said no, because you know what's going to happen is people are going to get to 21 and 60, and this was a licensed traffic study engineer who said this, that they would then go south on Milwaukee to 22 to the toll road. They would go through 10 or 12 lights instead of staying on 60, which would be 2 lights and a lot shorter, okay? What I try to use is the fact that I've been involved in transportation most of my life, and something that engineers just don't have, no offense to the engineers here, common sense. And my common sense tells me that 4 lanes will handle a lot more traffic, a lot more expeditiously than 2 lanes will. That's just simple math.
Assuming you get the railroad crossing fixed.
I'd like to add, trust me, we'd like to do that.
And my common sense tells me everybody's going to come off of Route 60.
No, that's where I disagree with you. I don't think anybody's going to come from 22 to drive 45.
It's much.
You said 60.
Instead of going down 60 to get to.
And once 60 is fixed and widened and repaired and everything like that, no, I just disagree.
Explained to me.
So there's no traffic.
Yeah, go ahead,
Ed
sir.
Maslow in Centennial Crossing. A few years ago, we did some work on 45. We added Fairway. We added a light, which was long coming at 45 in Prairie at that time. I don't know why that light was never put. It was a disaster for many, many years. But we added Fairway. Why is Fairway congested at rush hour? Why should that be? This is supposed to alleviate everything for the time being. But it seems as if 45 has gotten worse. And I don't know whether it's the train, because you're coming, I don't know if anybody had a study that shows it's the train that causes the delays on 45. And now Fairway is backed up.
Yeah.
Luckily for us, we can just sneak in through Huron, getting in our residence.
Well, once again, at the train station, some of us can be blamed for putting bringing the train station to town. I don't know if anybody here rides the train. Maybe not.
But
I mean, so I hope I hope somebody likes them.
I would like to add.
But I mean, again, I think it's I think that's a good amenity and a good service, and it allegedly it helps take traffic off the street. But
right.
And that's why we expanded, the parking lot that's there. But when 22 was finally open, and okay, now, and this is before the tollways started doing what they were doing, I think in all honesty, anybody that drove that in rush hour or in morning traffic, it was a better trip. I mean, because there were 2 lanes. Can I quantify that? No. So bottom line is, though, streets are being widened all over. The county, for example, with that, what was it, the half-cent sales tax that was tacked on, hopefully they're going to be able to do intersection improvements just so you can have stacking, have left turn lanes, right turn lanes, and 2 through lanes. But, to do even an intersection improvement is like a couple of $1 million, So anyway, go ahead.
But I don't know whether there has been a study to show whether it's actually the train, the crossing, that causes this delay, because in the morning and the evening, it's just ridiculous. And as I said, now Fairway is backed up too, and it can't just be because of the trains. But I would like to add one more thing that was brought up earlier concerning Rainey and being used as a shortcut and cut through by stone fence and such. And we know it is, because we see them coming around the roundabout, riding on the roundabout. But Chief, we've lived in this neighborhood for 11 years.
And I could say perhaps on on my fingers, that's the amount of time I've seen police monitoring the traffic. Once in a while, there'll be an officer stationed there, but it's ridiculous. Especially since we have a narrow street, when you have cars parked on the one side of the street, you're having games of chicken coming down rainy. Someone's gonna get hurt. And one of the reasons I was told why there wasn't a light at 45 for many years is because nobody was killed. That's why. That's what I was told. But anyway, there has been no monitoring of the traffic in our area that I'm aware of. Between 5 o'clock, 4:30, and 6:30 is ridiculous. Especially when there's cars parked, cars are just playing chicken. Someone's gonna get hurt. It's unacceptable. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I got here a little bit late. I don't know if has anybody talked about synchronizing the traffic lights in Lake County. You know, when at rush hour, if you go down Highway 60 or 83 or 22 or whatever, they're basically 4-lane parking lots. And you know, widening 45 is going to be a 4-lane parking lot if the lights are not synchronized. And I thought there was some work.
You know, there was. I mean, what's your name, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Linus Zenthafer, 599 South Central Park Place.
Yeah, I think the county, did the county undertake that?
The county is currently going through their passage system, which is interconnecting all of the different traffic signals within Lake County. They're even extending it out to the western areas of Lake County. They're going through that right now.
Wasn't there supposed to be a center built with, cameras?
There is, off of exactly. And you can go to Winchester Road, and that's where the LDOT offices are. They do have that facility, but they are interconnecting all of the different traffic signals and being able to control them from one location.
Will that happen before I die, or?
You know, I think so. They're pretty far along. I talked to them. I talked to them today at lunch. Yes, they're working on that.
Oh, okay. You know, and another thing with the cemetery, has anybody done anything at all with looking to see are there graves there? Can you use ground penetrating radar or something to find out if that soil's been disturbed in the last 100 years? Maybe there's nobody there.
Well, there are existing grave headstones right next to the property line.
But that's, and that's another thing. I don't know if that's alluvial depositing or not. Is what's the depth of the topsoil before you get to clay? Would you even have to go down 6 feet and disturb, grave, or I don't know what the protocol for that is.
Oh, you make it build over. Yeah.
I don't think we want to be driving, putting a road over everybody's grave.
After seeing the movie Poltergeist.
No.
I've been there for 10 years, and I have never seen anybody visit a grave in that area. The only traffic that goes over those graves, if there is anything, is a lawnmower. So,
yeah, okay.
Who's there? Is that somebody from 100 years ago? Who cares? I mean, they're not voting or anything. That's kind of a...
You can't, wait a second. Well, number one, it's not in Vernon Hills for that comment. But, to say that people don't go there and visit the grave sites,
I'm retired. I've been there 10 years. I've never seen anybody...
you don't sit at your window all day long.
I do. I sit and work on my computer, and I never see anybody. And that's another thing.
Okay.
Now people are driving, and their cars are their offices. And I saw a car run off, and fortunately ran out to the other side of the road and almost hit the blue house at the cemetery. Now, more and more people are distracted. In the paper a few weeks ago, somebody ran into a motorcycle, not even knowing it until they hit the person because they're on their phone and
she was doing her nails.
And
you're thinking of the one out there.
And they're eating their hamburgers and reading the paper.
Okay.
And I'm just afraid that something's going to happen. I'm right on the road there. And if you're going to come closer to the road, and a curb, I don't think is going to do anything to stop a car from leaving the road. At the very least, I think we need to have a berm and more trees and stuff instead of taking more trees down. That's just my opinion.
That's the plan.
Okay.
There's more things I like to say, but I don't want to.
Well, I don't care. You want to say it? Sure.
And are we going to have more trees, more like along? If we're going to put a berm, is that going to have trees over it to kind of deflect traffic if it leaves the road, or?
I don't know if there's going to be a berm. You know what I mean? But it's obviously being presented to this gentleman from IDOT, so.
Another thing is the elevation of the road going to be changed, or is it going to stay the same? I'm not so concerned about our house getting hit, although it is a possibility, because our house is above the level of the road. But there are some other people that their houses are with the level of the road, and further down they're below the level of the road. So I don't know, is that going to change, you know, or?
In general, the level, the profile, the level of the road is going to stay generally the same. Yeah. It is going to be raised a little bit in this area to provide a smoother transition over the railroad and provide better sight distances, so you're going to be able to see cars coming, you know, over the hill. With, you know, so it raises up a little bit over here. You've got a creek here, but eventually, you know, generally it follows the existing
that makes sense.
Profile.
Okay. I missed a discussion on the railroad crossing. Is that true, where you're not going to have a wider railroad crossing, or is that, what's the status of that?
We are proposing 2 lanes in each direction across the railroad.
The railroad?
Yeah.
Crossing? Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I just got to say, you know, I mean, can a car hit your house, you know, anywhere in any neighborhood? And I remember one night, this is from Grosse Pointe, somebody that lived, I don't know, in the middle of the neighborhood, and I knew that there was going to be a discussion on this when I saw her bring in part of her banister from her stairs. And you know, Jesus, you know, so anyway, you know, somebody, you know, I don't know if they had overserved themselves. Somebody just ran into the house, and it was in the middle of the block. So, you know, things can happen whether you're next to a highway or you're in the middle of your neighborhood, and that's just not your neighborhood. That's all over town. You know, I remember actually putting up the speed gun, Chief, over in, I think it was Hawthorne Club, to see who was, you know, speeding, and it, you know, was a lot of people who lived there, you know, so anyway. Yes, ma'am. Trustee Hebda, you can, Trustee Hebda.
I've been on this board too and worked through the charrette process for your neighborhood and respect and love the way the character of that neighborhood has occurred and want to keep that aesthetic going strong as well. So I certainly would be committed to making sure that we try to do what we can. But what we were talking about here is there been a thought about looking at lowering the road? Is there any way to lower it?
Oh, you mean in this stretch here? Okay.
The stretch here. Is that a possibility? Take it down a little bit.
Too. That's the...
It's certainly possible.
I mean, I don't know.
In certain areas where you're coming, you know, you've got fixed points where you've got side streets coming in.
Right.
You know, railroad crossings. You're at fixed points. Lowering it, though, then you know, could result in drainage issues where you might have to have ditches and things like that to collect the water before it actually hits the highway, and that it requires more right-of-way. There, you know, but it is possible. And if there was some place in particular that you were interested in, we could certainly take that back and look at it. But I don't know. I mean, to just wholesale say let's lower it, maybe that's not necessarily the approach.
I guess in respect to the number of houses there, if there is that possibility to look at that, to see if it's realistic to even think about lowering that road as it goes by Centennial Crossings. But I don't know.
And what is the depth we're looking to achieve? How much? What is lower? You know, I honestly, I mean, that's what we would want to look at that.
I would ask you to take a look at that. I mean, it's possible. I don't know if it's possible or not. I agree there could be drainage issues and all of that, but I wonder if that's a possibility, if that would help with noise reduction in that kind of situation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Village attorney, what?
Just
you had your light on. I'm like.
We usually don't get
as blinky. I apologize. Just one quick point. We've been talking about the cemetery for a long period of time, and the IDOT representative is suggesting that that's difficult to deal with. It's not that it's so much IDOT doesn't want to encounter an issue or they're shying away from an issue, but there's a state statute that regulates it and makes it very, very difficult to deal with. O'Hare is trying to eliminate a cemetery so they can expand O'Hare, and the city is having serious issues with being able to do that. I just put that out there so that you understand there's a state statute controlling that. It's not merely IDOT not wanting to deal with it. So
yeah, you know, and this is an information sharing comment from me, Dave. Can you share with the homeowners association drawings, or if they anything that's updated now?
In terms of these drawings, or
well, whatever we get.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm available to go through any of the drawings with anyone who would like to go through them. They're available.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously this isn't shown, the kind of detail we would have in phase 2, and even though phase 2 hasn't been done, but yeah. I mean, if we have something that is, I guess, more detailed and more complex than this, with at least to share with,
yes.
Yeah.
This is our latest information. As we get more information, IDOT shares it with us. We have it available for public review, public comment, public input.
Well, okay, and you'll let someone know from the
Absolutely.
HOA.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe, John, do you want to explain again the process on that? Once you get X amount more information, there's a public hearing process you mentioned.
Well, that's what he said, but that was in January, February.
That addresses your question.
Well, no, I'm just saying getting it to the people detail. Quicker than that, even. So.
Okay.
Please go ahead and.
Okay.
Answer.
Okay. I hope I remember what I came up here.
No,
no, that's okay. Mary Scudella, 578 South Central Park Place. Couple quick things that came up. First of all, is there a sidewalk on the south side of the new proposed 45 between Rainey and Fairway/Buffalo Grove Road?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I believe there's sidewalk and or bike path on both sides of the road.
Why?
One or the other.
Why is there a sidewalk on the south side? Could we eliminate part of the encroachment?
There's people that use, there's a guy that uses, in the morning I see him ride his bicycle on 45, so I'm sure you appreciate that.
I guess, in lots of areas there's sidewalk or bike path on one side of the street with easy access at Fairway Drive, Buffalo Grove Road there. It would be very easy to have the sidewalk or the bike path on one side or the other and not have it so that you don't have to deal with distance on both sides of the road. Just a suggestion. My second point is I don't think anyone in Centennial Crossings wants a sound wall barrier. I think that would dramatically detract from the traditional neighborhood design of our neighborhood. I think what we want is the berm, possibly maybe like the iron fencing, and if IDOT isn't willing to take care of that, my question is, Village has set a precedent on Fairway, Village has set a precedent on Butterfield. If IDOT does not put in what we're hoping for in terms of creating a safety, even in terms of a fencing or berming, will the village put in and help us out in that regard?
Yeah, well, we've gotten involved before. What was the actual cost regarding the fencing and landscaping down Fairway behind, obviously,
Ed, should we test your memory?
It was a little less, about $90,000 for the fence and the landscaping.
Right. And that was on our...
Right. That was local funds.
Yeah, okay. Well, all right.
I mean, I actually think that even if we're talking about moving it a little bit south, that the fence would be, it's not ideal, but it's definitely something that would protect our children. And then lastly, to speak to Mr. Brady's point, in terms of the distance or the quickness of going down 45, I know this isn't in Vernon Hills' jurisdiction, and I know it's not even actually in IDOT's jurisdiction, but no matter what, you're going to bottleneck at Old Half Day Road unless something's done to widen Old Half Day Road between 45, 21, and 22. That's where the traffic goes. It goes in that little stretch by Flatlanders, Egg Harbor, those condos there. And if nothing's done there, people aren't going to turn right onto Milwaukee to turn left onto 22 to get to 294. And if nothing's done on that little curve of a road that goes through the by the Village of Lincolnshire and their police department, no matter what, you're going to bottleneck there and it's going to hang up traffic. Thank you.
Maybe, John, do you want to explain that configuration in there? Because the plan is to do exactly what she indicated wasn't a good idea. Namely, to do those two, what is it, a right-hand turn, you go from 22 to 21 to 45, and then conversely, 45 to 21 to 22, because Lincolnshire, that's obviously their stretch of road, that piece of Old Half Day, and they don't want that to be 4 lanes.
Right. There's several issues with the Route 45 or the Old Half Day Road piece. There are some wetlands along the north side of the road. There are some archaeological issues, Indian artifact issues, things like that, that really make it a set. And there's forest preserve property there, so there's a lot of complex environmental issues that are along that stretch of Old Half Day Road. So what we're trying to do, understanding that widening that is probably not possible. I mean, I think it's going to be improved, or it's improved to probably to the most it's going to be able to fit in within that area. But what we're trying to do is that understanding that traffic is a lot like water, it goes to the area of where it's least resistance. So I mean, if it does bottleneck on Old Half Day Road at Route 22, well then that what we're trying to do is give that traffic an option, give drivers an option, try to encourage the right turn movement by providing 2 right-hand turn lanes onto Milwaukee Avenue, Route 21, and through between, essentially from just north of 45 to just south of 22, Milwaukee Avenue will have 6 lanes, 3 lanes in each direction, and then when it gets to Route 22, it'll have double left turn lanes to help facilitate that movement, to balance it out. And Route 22, being the primary route, will generally get a lot more green time than Old Half Day Road will. So as drivers use the facility, they may find that although they have to go through another light.
And you have to cross lanes of traffic.
I mean, to be honest, I actually go down Route 22 now sometimes, just to make the right-hand turn at 21, and sometimes
it's probably quicker.
Yeah. So we're just trying to give the options and try to, as much as possible, balance that, because that is an issue. It would be bottlenecked if you went straight there. So people can still do that. We can't preclude them from doing that, but they will have an option that doesn't require that. And so we're hoping that is going to have a net benefit.
So that people will use that and that it will actually alleviate the bottleneck?
Well, what we're going to do is that we're going to have 1 through lane at Old 45 or Old Half Day Road and 2 right turn lanes. So if that 1 through lane gets queued back up, drivers can then just jump in that right turn lane, those 2 right turn lanes that are wide open, and then they're gonna be able to move and just get into that queue. It's gonna, with 2 right turn lanes. Correct. There'll be 2 right turn lanes from 45 onto Milwaukee, and then 2 lefts from Milwaukee onto 22. So it'll give them the option, and they'll have opportunities. So you'll have 2 lanes coming in. One will be there'll be a single left turn lane. I actually don't remember if it's a double left turn lane there onto Milwaukee, but certainly a single left, a single through, and then 2 right turn lanes to help facilitate and promote that movement. If they choose not to, then we can't stop them from doing it, but it's likely the traffic will balance out.
Okay, listen, is there anything that you haven't said and haven't sent an email on? Because we have other agenda items, so yes, ma'am.
Sorry, we can't
Can
hear you.
you come up and
Please come on up.
Yeah.
This way you also get on TV.
Oh.
Yeah.
Francis Mazoff, 490 South Superior, Centennial Crossing. I have a question. Obviously, you're going to be widening 45. Fine. Do you have plans coming out of Corporate Woods around rush hour time at 3 o'clock when you're traveling west on 45, cars are coming out of Corporate Woods, because I worked where I coming home every day at that time. What happens is there's no light, there's nothing there, so one car comes out, another lets them in, another car comes out, and it becomes a bottleneck at that point. What do you have plans to ease that situation? Because even if you have 4 lanes or 6 lanes or 8 lanes, you still have people coming out of that industrial area, that working area, trying to get onto 45 heading west. May I meet with your approval? That
well, yeah, well, trust me, we, over the years before the light went in at 45 and Old Prairie / Buffalo Grove Road Fairway now, basically the owners of the business park, had opportunities to exit potentially out on Fairway, petition us for a traffic light. I'm not sure they wanted to go to their hip pocket to pay for it, because that's how most of the traffic lights have been underwritten that you see, that are in and out of, like Continental Executive Park. I mean, those were paid for by the corporations and the developer.
Excuse me, with all due respect, when we moved into Centennial Crossing 11 years ago and our children were learning to drive,
yeah,
we asked for a light to be placed at what now is Fairview, Fairway.
Oh, yeah,
Road,
yeah.
And we were told, with all due respect, Mr. Allison, that you had to wait until somebody had a fatality at that corner because it was coming in from the state. And we used to have our kids, who are now grown and out of the house, make a right-hand turn and circle around Corporate Woods. Now, I didn't ask if anybody in Vernon Hills would like to volunteer their children to be the first fatality. So I don't understand why a light has to come out from one corner from the state, and then a light has to come out from another from the corporation. Can you explain that to me?
No, you're confusing two things. The corporations paid for them, but even if we had a corporation that wanted to pay for one,
yes,
the light has to meet warrants before you can put it in. They're two separate issues. What the issue that you're talking about not being able to put one in, and I was equally frustrated with you, because the warrants are what they are, and IDOT will not let you do that, okay? Unless you meet warrants, you can't do it.
Warrants are rules.
Warrants are the rules that
I
yeah.
understand.
And the other issue, it's a totally separate issue. What the mayor was talking about was that after the intersection met warrants and a traffic light was put in, that it was corporate, not tax dollars, that paid for the light.
Well,
so they're two separate issues.
Widen 45. My point is, if you don't do something about Corporate Woods traffic coming out, it's not going to alleviate anything.
And we'll have to see what it meets in terms of warrants and stuff like that, because anytime we can, get something like that, I'm all for it. We pushed to try and get a light at Prairie and 45, but we couldn't get it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I already did, and anyway. Well, it's pricey, but with that said,
we wanted one. Trust me, we wanted one. When you're talking about at 45 and Prairie, we wanted one. We even went so far as the one time to put a police officer out there to direct traffic, and found out that was a terribly stupid idea. And we had to, we had to pull that back. That's the dumbest decision. I still say that's the dumbest decision in 17 years on this board, was that one, because it ruined traffic. But at that time, we were begging for a light. And we couldn't. We were ready to put up some cash too, and couldn't get it.
In response to a very bad accident at that intersection,
yes,
involving a school bus.
Yes, yes, and we were begging for a light there. We just couldn't get it.
Sometimes out of our hands.
and again, I don't know now with the light at Fairway and Buffalo Grove Road, what's, since it's a strategic regional artery, an SRA, how close is that?
Typically quarter-mile spacing
Right.
is the traffic signal. To Mrs. Masloff, in terms of one thing that this would improve by adding lanes is when people leave Corporate Woods in the PM peak hour, it backs up Corporate Woods all the way to Mundelein. And what this will assist is, we've heard from Centennial Crossing residents that people do not like waiting in line, and they cut down Fairway and they go through your subdivision, they go through Stone Fence, and then they get ahead of other cars. What this will do is, instead of cars backing up twice the distance, you cut that in half and you move them and you put them in another lane. So it will reduce the amount of backup of traffic, and then each person is making it through the signal. So people are trying to go through a light, but it's backed up, so maybe only a few cars can go through that light. In this instance, there's more traffic moving through because you have more capacity, and those are some of the principles on why you would add additional lanes to this roadway.
I've got that in my notes to talk to Chief about. And we'll do a stealth study. And Chief, when was the last time a stealth study was done? Because we have a new thing and you don't know it's there.
The timing
it's not
on this
one of
is,
those big signs.
The timing on this is coincidental, but it's being done this week.
Okay.
It's actually out there this week.
And do you know that there's a speed study being done right now? We've got this new device. It's really cool. You can put it on traffic, on light poles and stuff. You don't know it's there.
Hey.
Shh. Don't tell anybody.
Hey.
Now you just...
Way to go, Tom.
Cat's out of the
All
bag.
right. Well, anyway.
You don't know where it's at.
Anything that hasn't been addressed. Okay.
Fran Duke, 330 East LaSalle, Centennial Crossing. As long as we're talking about traffic and traffic lights, and as long as we're adding all this new traffic to 45 potentially, I sometimes will go to pick up my husband from the train, and the train is a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
And I can't tell you how many people run the red light on 45 when I'm trying to pull out of Centennial. Often, I can't even get out of Centennial because the lights are so poorly timed. It'll finally get green on our end. I'll try to pull out. I can't do it because they're all backed up because it's so poorly timed. But mostly, I'm concerned about the people running the red lights. And my husband walks there usually in the morning. I'm not that good. I don't pick him up, take him then. And I'm really concerned about all those walkers. And if we're going to make this 4 lanes, we better start enforcing the red light.
How about cameras?
Yeah, absolutely. It's terrible.
Because I've always been a proponent of that, but
They
people yell
run
about
those
when they
red
get
lights
arrested.
like crazy.
But if there's a camera there, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have
And
to
then-
worry about?
And then as long as I'm up here, I just do want to support my neighbors. I don't back up to 45, but I would hate to see a wall there, but I really think a berm is there. And if that means making a bike path a little smaller, making a sidewalk, especially on the south side that I never see anybody there, a little smaller, if it means getting rid of a turn lane out of the cemetery, which I came in late, so I apologize if that's not happening. But I mean, I really think a nice big berm rather than an ugly wall, and will be necessary for the noise, for the safety of the children. I just think it's so important. I think somehow that's got to get in the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You know, this isn't going to happen tomorrow. I mean, we can have another meeting. We can, you know, I mean, I think this is going out to the whole world. Well, not the whole world, but the whole town. You know, I mean, 2 days from now, yeah, on the internet. Well, sure, it might be on the internet. I don't know. But anyway, we you know, obviously appreciate your input. We understand your concern, and you know, it's on the record for IDOT. It's on the record for us. So, you know, we'll keep you in the loop.
Mayor,
and you know, to say when this is going to happen, I don't know. I mean, you know, because there's more engineering to do on phase 1, and then there's obviously a couple of years on phase 2, and we don't have the money, you know, the money isn't coming from the state, and we're certainly not going to underwrite it, you know, because it was allegedly, it's a $50 million project. Hell, it might be, you know, a lot more than that if it ever comes to true fruition. But we are guilty, collectively, of, you know, hearing it from a lot of other residents besides you guys, that, you know, we want 45 widened, and we started the process with the, you know, garnering or, you know, controlling and assembling the right-of-way for
the December 7th annexation.
December 7th, 1993?
94.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was 93. You mean the taking of Half Day?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, there was a battle there, or that would have been Lincolnshire on, I don't know, the whole corner there. So anyway, You know, that's where I'd like to end it tonight. And, you know, obviously you're welcome to continue calling and emailing and, you know, giving us your input. So.
Mayor, can I ask you a question? Do you want us to draft a letter that to IDOT? Yeah, I mean, to summarize some of the, I mean, we'll take a stab at it. It'll be a letter nobody will like, but, you know, it's kind of weighing through all the issues and making a statement on some
if I can add my 2 cents, I mean, I agree with the folks that talked about trying to get it as far south as possible. I agree with why do we need a bike path or a sidewalk on the south side? Let's get that road as tight. And Lincolnshire is doing just fine with the minimum amount of road width for 22, getting a whole lot of traffic through there. I used to drive that all the time, and I really believe that, you know, that is fine. So from my seat, yeah, let's minimize that road width. Not, please don't.
He lives in Hawthorne Club.
Yeah, and to answer, you know, there are 1,000 other residents and residences that can't get out on 45, and they're looking for some relief, and they've been clamoring for that ever since these other developments were built 10, 15 years before yours was. And that's why these good folks who've been on the board much longer than I have got the right-of-ways and started the process. But I definitely agree. You've got a very interesting neighborhood. It's unique, and I love, in fact, Mr. Laudenslager will tell you that I keep beating him up. I said, you know, there's a new dead tree there. We got to get that tree down to make sure everything looks good, because that is a very unique piece of real estate there. And I would love to see as much of that preserved as possible. On the other hand, though, I firmly believe we need to get traffic flowing through this community, allow the other neighborhoods, pods, whatever you want to call it, the ability to get out and you know, get on their way. And so I think we need to come to some middle ground, and hopefully that middle ground saves as much of the land on the north side as possible. And so from my perspective, I'd like to see that letter strongly worded to minimize the impact of the total amount of pavement and to mitigate as much as we can from the north side.
Okay, Trustee Wood.
Thank you. I probably won't be as elegant as Trustee Schultz, but I too would like to see the roadway moved as far south as it can, as long as it does not encroach on anyone's grave. I don't care if somebody hasn't been visited for 100 years. I don't want anybody's grave desecrated. My parents have been dead for almost 50 years. They're in another state. I don't get to visit them very often, but that doesn't mean my mind doesn't visit them. And I would be very upset if somebody wanted to move their grave. So no, I will not support desecrating anybody's grave for any reason. But I would like to see the roadway as far south as we can put it.
Okay, we're going to do the letter, trying to, you know, summarize what we've discussed here tonight, and we'll CC the HOA.
After you all have
I mean,
fine-tuned it and changed it and massaged
and I'm sure that the representative from IDOT has seen letters that's probably coming now. Won't be the first time. So anyway, I'm going to go to the next agenda item. You know, you're welcome to come back anytime. Oh, okay. Well, want to take a break? Okay, fine. Anyway, thanks for coming out. We appreciate your input.